started out by saying, here's the first thing you need to know. I got this message from Jesus. That's where it came from. I didn't go to seminary. I didn't have to sit at Peter's feet. I got it directly from Jesus. And then I went out and I preached that gospel to the Gentiles. And at some point when there was a lot of pressure, I went to Jerusalem for what we see in Acts chapter 15, the Council of Jerusalem. And I laid before them what happens, what kind of miracles have happened, what God has done, and what I preach. And they say, wow. And they add nothing to my message, except to encourage me to remember the poor. And then we have this passage where we're going to pick up in chapter 2, verse 11. He says, when Peter, remember Peter? The one who was supposed to go to the Jews, right? Peter, we love Peter. When Peter came to Antioch, I opposed him to his face because he was in the wrong. Before certain men came from James, James being the brother of Jesus, who's in Jerusalem. Before certain men came from James, he used to eat with the Gentiles. You remember that's a no-no if you're Jewish, right? You don't eat with Gentiles. He said that he used to eat with the Gentiles, but when they arrived, he began to draw back and separate himself from the Gentiles because he was afraid of those who belonged to the circumcision group. We have a name for him now. The circumcision group. It's catchy, right? Everybody wants to jump up and sign in because it's a catchy name. All right, the circumcision group. The other Jews joined him in his hypocrisy. We ran across that word this morning in the children's moment. So that by their hypocrisy, even Barnabas was led astray. He said things got bad. Peter came, he was celebrating his spiritual life with the Gentile brothers. We were eating together. We were together. There was no separation between Jew and Gentile, but then some folks came from James. And they had a whole different idea of how Peter ought to act, and Peter started separating himself. I think I'm moving off the camera here. Okay, all right. To the point that even Barnabas was going, wow, maybe I should be with this group over here. Right? Because I was raised that way. Because those are my people. Paul says in their hypocrisy, in their acting, and they're doing spiritual things for men to see, specifically the men who came from James. They were led astray. Now he started out saying, I got in Peter's face. You ever had anybody get in your face? Okay. There are different ways translators have translated it. Some say I rebuked Peter to his face. Does anybody have that? I rebuked him to his face in your translations? I corrected him? Have you ever had anybody correct you? Yeah? There are three different kinds of ways of correction. Three different words we have in the New Testament. One is translated encouragement. It's a translation of the word parakaleo. It means literally to walk beside somebody. The idea is you take somebody out for a walk and you see what's going on in their life. And it's something about walking with somebody, you know, they feel free to open up and they feel free to listen to advice. It's a fascinating thing that happens with people. I mean, if you remember going for walks with your dad or your mom or somebody who cared about you, they said, let's just go for a walk. Well, that's the word parakaleo. We translate it encourage, give each other courage. The next one is to correct or to exhort. An exhortation is something that will startle you. An exhortation is something that says, you need to watch out. The way you're going, you're going to fall down. It's not fun to be exhorted. We look to be exhorted sometimes in sermons. In a Bible study. We get exhortations from our parents. Right? And close friends. They're not some say, man, I can't wait to be exhorted. You know, I'm going to call them up. Hey, you got any exhortations for me? No, but they are needed. If somebody loves you enough to say, hey, you know, you see where you're going? There's a wall right there. You're going to run into that thing if you don't stop. The third one is a rebuke. I tell people, if you have ever been rebuked, you will remember it. You don't have to say, have I ever been rebuked? Well, maybe. No. If you've ever been rebuked, there will be no doubt in your mind that I was rebuked. Peter needed to be rebuked. Because it wasn't just about Peter. It was about the whole movement. It was about the whole church. And so here's what Paul does. He rebukes them. He says, verse 14, when I saw that they were not acting in line with the truth of the gospel, I said to Peter in front of all of them, in front of them all, you are a Jew, yet you live like a Gentile and not like a Jew. How is it then that you force Gentiles to follow Jewish customs? We who are Jews by birth and not Gentile sinners know that a man is not justified by observing the law, but by faith in Jesus Christ. So we too have put our faith in Christ Jesus, that we might be justified by faith in Christ and not by observing the law, because by observing the law, no one will be justified. How do you think Peter felt? Tell you what, when you're rebuked, your first response is not to say, hey, thank you, I really needed that. That would be more of an exhortation response. You know, you made me think, thank you very much. When you're rebuked, you are gasping for air. Because it is knocked all the air out of you. How do you think Peter responded to that? He probably didn't have anything to say. You're not acting in line with the truth of the gospel. You've given up being justified by faith, and now you want to go back to having a semblance or some kind of law where you can look down on somebody else and say, boy, don't you wish you could be like us? And Peter had to own this one. So did Barnabas. And so did the people who received this letter. The letter we call Galations. Because they are buying into this thing. So here is Paul's defense. I got the gospel from Jesus. I went and I put it in front of everybody. They didn't add it to me. And when they came and they were off, I corrected them. Now, he says in verse 17, if while we seek to be justified in Christ, it becomes evident that we ourselves are sinners, does that mean Christ promotes sin? Absolutely not. This is the biggest argument. We saw this back in Romans, and if you forgot, you can go back. It's still on YouTube. Okay, it's still back there. But their biggest argument is, well, is the law bad? No, it's not bad. No. It shows us how sinful we are. But do we live under the law? No.